Hypertension is a very common disease that a lot of people have, especially people as they age and get older. So, hypertension in a medical sense is typically when you've been diagnosed with a blood pressure of 130 over 80 or higher. So, medically, that's considered a hypertension. Those numbers come from two different things. So, the top number is what's called your systolic pressure. And if that is 130 or below, that's considered normal. The bottom number is your systolic pressure, and that if it's 80 or below, that's considered normal. So if you start getting into having blood pressures that are 140 over 90, that's typically going to put you into the hypertensive range, and your doctor may prescribe hypertensive medications to bring that blood pressure down. Now, when we talk about blood pressure or hypertension for VA purposes, it's actually pretty difficult to get a rating for hypertension. So I'm going to kind of go through the rating schedule and we'll tell you what those ratings look like and what your blood pressures need to be. But then I want to talk about why it's important to getting the blood pressure service connected, even if you're not going to get a rating or you get a non-compensable rating or 0%. So in order to get a 10% rating for hypertension, VA requires that you have a systolic pressure, which is that bottom number, of at least 100, and that top number needs to be at least 160. So if your blood pressures are below 160 over 100, you're not going to qualify for a 10% rating for hypertension through VA. If at some point your systolic pressure is 100 or more, your top number is lower than that 160, but you're taking medications, then you can still get that 10% rating. From there, it just really gets a little bit harder to get your ratings up. So a 20% rating is going to require a systolic pressure above 110 and your systolic number to be 200. So you're looking at 200 over 110 for a 20% rating. From there, they no longer look at that top number, that systolic number, they just look at the bottom. And so for a 40% rating, you're looking at 130. And for a 60% rating, you're looking at 140. For a 40% rating, you're looking just at that bottom number that needs to be at 120 or higher. For a 60% rating, you're looking at that bottom number, your systolic, to be at 130 or higher. 60% is the highest rating there is for hypertension. So that'll be the highest you can certainly get. One thing that VA gets wrong a lot of times when they're giving out the ratings is that if you have hypertension, most of the time you're going to be on antihypertensive medications to bring your hypertension down to more manageable levels. In that case, if you were to go into a CMP exam and you have your blood pressure readings are normal because you're on those medications, then everybody would get 0% ratings. But one thing VA has to do is they're supposed to look at your average blood pressures prior to becoming medicated. So if you had really, really terrible blood pressure and you were, 200 over 130, that's indicative of a 60% rating, but now it's managed by medications, and so your readings are lower, you're still entitled to that 60% rating it would have been prior to you taking your medications. And so a lot of times when we see these hypertension ratings come back, we're seeing them come back at 0%. And if you need that extra 10%, you can certainly say, hey, this is the proof that my blood pressure was higher than that prior to starting the medications. So I at least require a 10% rating or 20% wherever your blood pressures fell. Most of the time, just having the hypertension service connected is really, really important.
Hey, Nate here, Hill & Ponton's video guy. The video you just watched is expanded on further in this one right here. Learn something more, increase your rating. As Matt always says, knowledge is power. So go ahead,